Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio have teamed up for several cinematic masterpieces, but none quite matches the sheer audacity of The Wolf of Wall Street. A riotous celebration of excess, this wild comedy offers a satire of Wall Street's deliriousness. The film delves into scandalous characters and themes, and was itself caught up in controversies ranging from accusations of animal cruelty and glorifying debauchery to its connection to a real-world financial fraud. As we'll see, The Wolf of Wall Street was a wild ride both on and off the screen. The real Wolf of Wall Street was a man of flesh and blood and insatiable greed, stockbroker Jordan Belfort. At just 24, he founded Stratton Oakmont. Teaming up with his partners Danny Porish and Brian Blake, they went from running a small-time operation on Long Island to living the high life as millionaires and eccentrics. Belfort had it all: money, women, and power. He indulged in the wildest parties and gave in to his most extreme vices. With no limits in sight, the world was his oyster. However, Belfort built his fortune through illegal business practices, and in 1999, the FBI arrested him. He pleaded guilty to fraud and deception. Although sentenced to 4 years in prison, he served only 22 months at the Taft Correctional Institution in California. During his time there, he shared a cell with actor Tommy Chong, who was part of the popular comedy duo Cheech and Chong. Chong encouraged him to write his memoir, and even offered some advice. If you're going to write about your life, pick the craziest and saddest parts. Nobody wants to read something boring. Belfort followed through exactly as he had been advised. However, Random House, the publishing house set to release the book, requested toning down certain parts, particularly those involving bestiality. The author adhered to their suggestions and promptly finished The Wolf of Wall Street. Published in 2007, the book caused a sensation with its graphic depictions of the broker's debaucherous lifestyle and his utter lack of remorse. Readers were captivated by the tale of a talented, cunning, and charismatic anti-hero. The book quickly caught the eye of Hollywood, sparking a fierce bidding war among studios for the film rights. Leonardo DiCaprio emerged victorious, securing the rights and signing on to star in the film, produced by his company Appian Way. Warner Brothers was tapped to produce, and there was no question that Martin Scorsese would helm the project. DiCaprio and the filmmaker had previously collaborated on Gangs of New York. They reunited for The Aviator and The Departed, the latter of which finally earned Scorsese the long-overdue Academy Award for Best Director. The pair had solidified their reputation as the new powerhouse duo of cinema, mirroring the legendary partnership Scorsese had forged with Robert De Niro years earlier. The Wolf of Wall Street was tailor-made for Scorsese. He had a proven track record of crafting compelling narratives about criminals who rise to the top in glamorous yet chaotic worlds, only to face the ultimate consequences. Goodfellas and Casino are prime examples of this. Scorsese was a master at making audiences empathize with morally ambiguous characters. DiCaprio and Scorsese recognized that a strong script was essential, so they enlisted Terrence Winter to write it. Having grown up surrounded by the toughs of Brooklyn, Winter developed an affinity for characters who operated outside the law. As a teenager, he was first introduced to Scorsese's work when he watched Taxi Driver. After earning a law degree and practicing for 2 years, he followed his creative passion and became a screenwriter. His career skyrocketed as a key writer on The Sopranos. Subsequently, he served as the showrunner for Boardwalk Empire. It was on this series that he finally collaborated with his idol, who directed the pilot episode. Winter was completely absorbed in Belfort's book. He recognized it as a darkly comic, tragic tale of a meteoric rise and fall. Unable to put it down, he devoured it in less than a day and eagerly agreed to adapt it for the screen. With the key players in place, production on The Wolf of Wall Street was greenlit. DiCaprio spent hours interviewing Belfort, delving deep into the broker's psyche to capture his essence. He even drew parallels between Belfort's speeches at Stratton Oakmont and William Wallace's rousing addresses in Braveheart. Belfort was thrilled with the casting and the million-dollar deal he had secured for the film rights. Concurrently, Winter collaborated closely with Scorsese. The screenwriter admired the director's penchant for in-depth discussions about the nuances of a scene and its underlying themes. To mitigate the risk of legal action, certain names in the book had to be changed. Porish, Belfort's right-hand man, was renamed Donnie Azoff. Additionally, the protagonist's first 2 wives were given new identities. Most notably, Nadine Caridi became Naomi Lapaglia. As production was gearing up, setbacks began to emerge. Warner Brothers was hesitant to give the film the go-ahead. Executives were concerned about the project's explicit content and considered imposing censorship. They also doubted its commercial viability. Frustrated by these delays, Scorsese eventually walked away from the project after 5 months. He then turned his attention to his next film, the psychological thriller Shutter Island, which also starred Leonardo DiCaprio. But the actor remained committed to bringing The Wolf of Wall Street to the screen, and in 2010, he took steps to make it a reality. He approached Ridley Scott, with whom he had previously collaborated on Body of Lies, to direct the film. Scott seemed like the perfect fit. He has a knack for portraying characters who challenge the status quo, as evidenced by his work on Matchstick Men, a film about con artists. DiCaprio and Scott planned to begin production on The Wolf of Wall Street once they had completed their other projects. However, Warner Brothers remained hesitant and ultimately pulled the plug on the film. Undeterred, DiCaprio quickly sought out a new production company and found the perfect partners in Granite Pictures. This up-and-coming studio had recently been founded by Joey McFarland and Riza Aziz, a Malaysian businessman. Keep that last guy in mind, because it will become tragically important in the future. Their previous work included the romantic comedy Friends with Kids. Unlike Warner Brothers, Granite was genuinely enthusiastic about the project and offered DiCaprio complete creative control. Moreover, they secured distribution deals with Paramount Pictures for North America and Japan, and Universal Pictures for international markets. Now, The Wolf of Wall Street was ready to take a bite out of the box office. And even better, Scorsese was back on board. The director reunited with his longtime collaborators, including editor Thelma Schoonmaker. He also brought in new talent, such as cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto, who would go on to work on many of Scorsese's subsequent films. But it was the supporting cast assembled around DiCaprio that would truly make or break the film. Jonah Hill, the rising star of American comedy and an Oscar nominee for Moneyball, landed the role of Donnie. Eager to work with Scorsese, Hill told producers he would do it for the lowest possible salary. They took him up on his offer, and he quickly signed a contract for the Screen Actors Guild minimum of $60,000, a far cry from DiCaprio's $10 million. But Hill was thrilled. He even admitted he would have given Scorsese all his money just to work with him. Meanwhile, Matthew McConaughey took on the role of Mark Hanna, a seasoned stockbroker who serves as Belfort's mentor. Though a relatively small part, the character plays a pivotal role in the film. Other notable additions to the cast included Jon Bernthal, Kyle Chandler, and Jean Dujardin. However, the most talked about role was that of Naomi. Olivia Wilde was initially considered for the part and auditioned, but she didn't get the role. When she asked for feedback, she was told that she was too sophisticated for the character. While Wilde took the news gracefully, she later learned that someone on the production team had called her old. Ironically, Wilde was only 28 at the time. Despite this, she held no grudge against Scorsese, and years later would appear in his HBO series Vinyl, which was co-created by Winter. Returning to The Wolf of Wall Street, casting directors conducted a more extensive search for actresses before ultimately settling on Margot Robbie. A native of Australia, Robbie had already made a name for herself on Australian television. At 22, Robbie eagerly auditioned for The Wolf of Wall Street. Her first scene was a particularly intimate one with DiCaprio. Both actors had the script, but Robbie decided to take a risk. She's always believed that if you want to make a lasting impression, you have to do something bold. So, instead of kissing DiCaprio as the script called for, she slapped him. This unexpected move completely captivated Scorsese. With all the pieces in place, principal photography for The Wolf of Wall Street began on August 8, 2012. While Winter's script provided a solid foundation, Scorsese and the cast brought their own unique perspectives to the film, enriching the overall experience. One standout moment occurred during the filming of an early scene. In a restaurant, Belfort and Hanna engage in a peculiar interaction. McConaughey, known for his method acting, had improvised a strange ritual of humming and pounding his chest. Intrigued and slightly bewildered, DiCaprio mirrored McConaughey's actions, making the scene feel more authentic. DiCaprio later admitted that this impromptu moment significantly altered the tone of the film. DiCaprio also had the freedom to improvise on set. One memorable instance was when Jordan attempts to kick open a car door. Determined to get the shot right, DiCaprio didn't mind a little back pain. He and the rest of the cast were also given considerable creative freedom during the interrogation scenes. They were encouraged to answer the questions however they saw fit, as long as they didn't reveal any plot-critical information. Although she was an up-and-coming star at that time, Robbie was far from a passive participant, offering valuable input that made it into the final cut. Her role involved several sexually suggestive scenes, culminating in a particularly daring seduction of Belfort. Scorsese initially suggested using a sheet to cover Robbie, but she was adamant about avoiding gratuitous nudity. She felt it was more empowering for her character to be fully exposed, as it reflected Naomi's confidence and agency. Despite her nerves, Robbie decided to go for it. The large crew and the vulnerability of the scene were intimidating, so she had a few drinks to calm her nerves. Ultimately, she reasoned that the focus would be on DiCaprio, and her own body would be less scrutinized. On the other hand, Jonah Hill's dedication to his role went a bit too far. While the characters were shown snorting a harmless vitamin D powder, Hill's enthusiasm led to him inhaling so much that he ended up in the hospital with bronchitis. Following an inspired shoot and post-production, The Wolf of Wall Street hit theaters in December 2013. With the Scorsese-DiCaprio duo at the helm, expectations were sky-high. And the film delivered in spectacular fashion, grossing $392 million worldwide and becoming Scorsese's highest-grossing film to date. Critics raved about DiCaprio's performance, but Hill and Robbie also garnered significant praise. Robbie's breakout role in the film propelled her to stardom. It came as no surprise that The Wolf of Wall Street became a major contender during awards season, earning 5 Oscar nominations. After years of anticipation, it seemed like DiCaprio's time had finally come. However, the Academy Award for Best Actor went to his co-star Matthew McConaughey for his performance in Dallas Buyers Club. Despite its critical acclaim and box office success, The Wolf of Wall Street left the awards season empty-handed. But the lack of Oscars was the smallest of the problems that were about to come. The film faced significant backlash from critics who argued that it glamorized the debaucherous and unethical behavior of Jordan Belfort and his associates. DiCaprio defended Scorsese's decision to present the characters without judgment, explaining that it's essential to examine and discuss such societal issues. The film also generated controversy due to its use of animals, particularly a chimpanzee named Chance. The animal rights group Friends of Animals protested the film and attempted to boycott its release, claiming that Chance had suffered emotional distress as a result of being forced to perform on camera. Concurrently, the production faced a lawsuit from Andrew Green, a former Stratton Oakmont executive who served as the inspiration for the character Nicky Rugrat Koskov. Green alleged that the film portrayed him in a grossly defamatory light, depicting him as a depraved individual. He also claimed that Belfort had fabricated many of the stories told in the film. Separately, federal prosecutor Joel M. Cohen criticized the film for failing to acknowledge the victims of Belfort's fraudulent schemes. But all of that paled in comparison to the real-life scandal that would soon unfold. Riza Aziz, one of the producers of Red Granite Pictures, was the stepson of Najib Razak, the former Prime Minister of Malaysia. In 2009, Najib had established 1MDB, Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund. However, the fund accumulated massive debts, and in 2015, investigations revealed that a staggering $4.5 billion had been stolen by Najib and his associates. Aziz was among those implicated. The U.S. Department of Justice determined that a portion of these stolen funds had been used to finance the $100 million production of The Wolf of Wall Street. Aziz was subsequently arrested by the FBI, and the U.S. government threatened to seize the film's profits. Red Granite eventually agreed to pay a $60 million settlement. In May 2020, Aziz was charged by Malaysian prosecutors. Not a single Malaysian citizen benefited from the film's success. Despite all the controversy, The Wolf of Wall Street continued to gain a massive following, spawning countless memes and viral jokes. As for Belfort, he managed to reinvent himself as a motivational speaker, touring the world to give talks. He became a millionaire again, started a family, and claims that his excessive lifestyle is a thing of the past. He was generally satisfied with his on-screen portrayal, though he once expressed resentment towards DiCaprio. Belfort claimed that DiCaprio had promised to help him get opportunities in Hollywood, but never followed through. Based on a wild, true story, The Wolf of Wall Street evolved into a modern cinematic classic. The dedication and boldness of those involved gave the film that special quality that elevates it to a masterpiece. Despite the constant controversies, the film's final product remains untarnished, confirming the enduring fascination we have with certain criminal figures. Just when it seemed like the horror genre had run out of fresh scares and new monsters, Terrifier burst onto the scene. But like many cult classics, the road to success was long and hard-fought.